and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
To the Gay USA, I'm Andy Hum.
Looks like you're a foot taller. Let's fix that. All right. I'm Ann Northrup, dumbfounded by the amount of news we have this week.
Starting with the fact that in Montana, a judge has rejected the suit to force the legislature there to reinstate the out-trans representative, Zooey Zephyr.
That's depressing. And at the other end of the country in Florida, it is now Disney versus DeSantis versus Nikki Haley.
But there's Fightback in Kansas, Missouri, and Tennessee.
And other places too. And progress in Minnesota and Colorado, and glimmers of hope in South Carolina and Nebraska.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we don't often talk about, was in a homophobic attack on out teacher union leader Randi Weingarten during a congressional hearing.
That's really, it's a stunner. On the floor of the U.S. House, a Hawaii Democrat sings the praises of prominent Aloha State drag queen. Very inspiring.
President Biden condemned the lavender scare purge of gay people from government in the 1950s. I mean, he did it now. The scare was in the 50s.
Yes. San Francisco ends its ban on doing business with anti-LGBTQ states and those where abortion is banned.
Uganda's murderous anti-LGBTQ bill has advanced overwhelmingly.
And Russia has gotten around to banning a ballet about Rudolf Nureyev because it's too illegally gay.
And the Tony nominations are chock full of out LGBTQ performers and creators. But we start in Montana. We've told you about how Zooey Zephyr, representative there, has basically been barred from the floor of the Montana legislature. She's allowed to vote outside. She has to sit outside on a bench.
She was censured by the legislature and then thrown out of the main room. That little Post-it note above her head, that yellow Post-it note, says seat number 31. That is her seat in the House.
So some anti-trans folks sent in a bunch of women, actually, to go sit on her bench to displace her. It's just so petty, incredibly petty. And
one of those women was the mother of the House Speaker in Montana.
Right.
But then they got displaced too.
And, of course, there were thousands of Montanans in Missoula who took to the streets. That's Zooey with her partner, Aaron Reed, about much more later. But they stood up with her. This is Missoula.
Missoula is a very progressive college town, but it brought out hundreds of people to protest. That's how she got elected in the first place, because it's a progressive college town.
And her partner, who we showed there for a second, trans journalist Aaron Reed, was targeted by a swatting, where somebody calls and says, "We need a SWAT team at that residence. Something horrible is happening," at her Maryland residence on Tuesday. But she had been in contact with local authorities months before that, saying, "Look, I'm a very visible trans activist. So, something like this might happen." And that prevented violence on the scene. The police ended up calling her and saying, "Are you all right?" And she said, "I'm okay." So she says she'll never stop advocating. She advises all of us who are visible, especially in these hot areas with drag queens and trans people, to contact local police and tell them to put a note in the system so that you don't get swatted.
So the legislature passed the anti-trans bill. The governor signed it with great fervor. And what we're seeing now is a wave of these instances. We saw the two representatives in Tennessee who got expelled from the legislature because they had acted up. We saw the non-binary representative in Oklahoma who was censured for speaking up against anti-trans bills. This is now the way the Republican-controlled politicians are operating across the board. They want to just get rid of anything reeking of dissent, and it is spreading like wildfire.
Well,
and in Texas, what happened in the last couple of days is that hundreds of demonstrators showed up to protest anti-trans bills there. They were inside the Capitol. They were chanting, trans rights are human rights or whatever. And they got tackled, arrested, removed from the Capitol. There is just a huge wave of silencing of any dissent, any discussion. The Republicans are just shutting it down across the board.
One of the trans activists, Sophia Sepulveda of Equality, Texas, and a trans group, she has been barred from entering the Capitol for a year by the troopers there because she unfurled a banner that said, "Let trans kids grow up."
Free speech, Republicans are for freedom. Forget it, nowhere. So the ACLU and the ACLU of Montana came to Montana Representative Zooey Zephyr's defense and sued to have her reinstated in the Montana legislature on the grounds that you can't just stifle dissent and throw people out as a political body. They lost. The judge upheld the expulsion of Zooey and said that he did not have the jurisdiction to overrule the legislature's decision. The legislature is a ruling body in and of itself, and he was not going to overrule their actions.
Going back to Texas for a second, there was a story in Vice News that I think is telling. A Southern Baptist mother told her teen son he was going to hell when she found out he was gay in 2022. When he engaged in self-harm, she briefly let him go for counseling at the Rainbow Youth Project. But she got then turned on to Moms for Liberty by the late Tucker Carlson, and she pulled her son out of counseling and tried to take his own life. Moms for Liberty met with her and said, "You've got to sue that gay group for what happened to your son." And then he made a second suicide attempt. And she finally woke up to the fact that she was being manipulated. And she now says Moms for Liberty is responsible for what her son went through.
And that's happening also all over the country. They're not a big group, but they have latched on to this system of raising these objections, and it's having wide-ranging effects. Also in Texas, in Houston, one parent complained about a drag performer in a play that the kids were going to go see, James and the Giant Peach. James and the Giant Peach, the Roald Dahl book and play. And so 9 schools canceled their field trip to the play after one complaint by one parent. And the way this comes up as drag, they have 20 roles in the play, but only 9 actors. So the actors were playing multiple roles and multiple genders. And that ended up being labeled by one parent as drag, and 9 schools canceled the field trip.
Well, and this is why the U.S. Association of Prides has issued a nationwide call to action. We have a graphic here. Stop the slate of hate. They're asking all of us to march against the 460 plus anti-LGBTQ bills. If you want to read up about Pride in your area or in a city that you're headed for, go to usaprides.org. And they're going to urge you, as we always do, be active, tell your state officials to vote against these hate bills and for LGBTQ rights, and protest when they won't listen. They're going to have a national meeting on Zoom on May 21st with leaders of all the major LGBT groups to talk about this. We will link to it in our email. Go to gayusatv.org and sign up for that.
Well, you, Andy, last week called for turning the pride parades into protest marches, a sentiment with which I heartily agree, as one of the co-founders of the anti-parade protest march in New York, I got into an email exchange with one of the USA Pride organizers and organizers of that phone call. And I said, well, I hope on this call, you're going to be asking people to turn their parades into protests. Oh, we don't do that. That's too political for us. We are urging people to, take note of these bills, but no, we would never ask a pride parade to turn itself into a protest march. So
Stonewall was a riot. Stonewall was a riot.
Exactly. So I'm blowing the whistle on that conversation and saying, by all means, get on that call on the 21st and start really raising some hell about how we have to be out in the streets. I mean, here you have these pride parades, which are undoubtedly the largest gatherings of LGBTQ people and allies across the country at similar timing. And you could have millions of people raising this alarm as a protest. And so far, hands off.
Right. Going back to Texas for a second, they now have a bill to let school districts employ chaplains instead of school counselors, and specifies that they'll not be required by the State Board for Educator Certification to be certified. Counselors currently have to have a master's degree in counseling and have 2 years of teaching experience. Under the bill, you just have to love the Lord.
Well, should we go to Florida?
We can.
Then we'll go back to other states.
Yes, we will. Let's go to Florida.
So the phonied up DeSantis board overseeing the Disney special district is now countersuing Disney, which had sued them for trying to grab power. And the countersuit says Disney's getting past regulations to maintain some control was a backroom deal. Isn't that the definition of politics?
They act like they're doing the will of the people, which is not what the polls are saying.
Absolutely not.
Even Nikki Haley invited Disney to bring its 70,000 jobs to South Carolina, which she says is not woke, but not sanctimonious about it either. Because she wants it both ways. She wants to be the Republican nominee for president. She also try to have it both ways on the abortion issue. And she says she's for consensus on an issue where there is none. And she won't answer questions about how she would address it. But in light of this, and she's not pro-gay. I mean, DeSantis's PAC did an ad showing Haley as Disney and gay rights supporter, which she is not.
Well, when has that stopped any of them before? It'll be interesting to see whether her hypocrisy and trying to have it both ways gets her any farther than the extremists on both sides. All right, other states.
We've got Dwayne Wade in Florida. He's a father of a trans daughter, and he's moved out of Florida over its anti-LGBTQ laws. All the more significant since he became a basketball legend with the Miami Heat. Daughter Zaya, 15, came out in 2020.
Second from the right.
Wade played 15 seasons in Miami, delivering 3 NBA championships.
That's him and his wife, Gabrielle Union, who is just magnificent, and the 3 kids with Zaya there, the trans girl,
right,
who's developing a stunning modeling career.
You want to do some more state news? Okay. Well, the progress in Kansas Republicans failed to override Democratic Governor Laura Kelly's veto of their bill banning gender-affirming care for minors. But they did override her veto of their bill to require jails to have separate facilities for inmates based on sex assigned at birth, making things more dangerous for them.
The governor of North Dakota, I think, has set a new record. He signed his 8th anti-LGBTQ bill this year.
Actually vetoed one of them, I think, but anyway. In Missouri, a state judge blocked the restrictions on transgender health care for minors and adults that was imposed by the Republican Attorney General, Andrew Bailey.
And the Texas bill that everyone was demonstrating over in the Capitol would have not only forbidden trans care for minors, it would have forced everyone to detransition. Everyone.
Good. In Tennessee, the United States Justice Department filed suit challenging the ban on gender-affirming care for minors, saying it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Civil Rights Division said the right to consider your health and medically approved treatment options of your family and doctors is a right everyone should have. And so they're involved. They're even doing more. Well, they're doing things. The ACLU has an even stronger case, and Lambda challenging these laws on a whole bunch of other bases.
Back to Florida for a second. We're clearly going to hopscotch the country today. State Representative Michelle Raymer, who is trans, said, wait, is she trans or lesbian?
Sorry.
You're the one who sent out the story. But either way, she says, I'm just trying to exist. You know, why are you coming after me?
Right. Okay. In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz signed a bill protecting gender-affirming care and abortion rights. We decided we're going to be an island of decency, he said.
Yeah, good guy. Back to Florida, Leon County, which is Tallahassee, the state home of the state capital, the superintendent of education, Rocky Hanna, is in danger of losing his license. He told teachers that they could ignore the Don't Say Gay bill, gave students the day off to protest, and required masks during COVID. He's walking the plank.
Well, Nebraska and South Carolina, you may be surprised to hear, beat back some extreme anti-abortion measures. And in Colorado,
wait a second before you leave that. The way they beat them back was that women in the legislature, both Republican and Democrat, got up and complained about this attempt to outlaw abortion and managed to gather enough votes to keep it from passing. It was a wonderful, if you find that video on YouTube, it's tremendously inspiring to see these women, Republican members in particular, stand up against anti-abortion laws.
In our childhood, Anne, Planned Parenthood, Republicans were the party of Planned Parenthood.
Sure.
All right. In Colorado, they passed a whole bunch of, where they had the mass shooting at the Colorado Springs gay bar this past year. They passed a whole bunch of gun control measures, including letting victims sue manufacturers, but they didn't ban the semi-automatics.
And students are walking out all over the country. They had that one day in Florida, but they now have rolling demonstrations everywhere. I mean, we've just told you about Texas and other places. Well, Philadelphia had a big walkout of students, particularly trans students. And there were other walkouts and demonstrations in Virginia and in Kansas City.
And they're advocating for things there in Philadelphia. They want Governor Josh Shapiro to do an executive order, making Pennsylvania a sanctuary state for trans people. They want Philadelphia to allocate more funding for staff training on trans issues, as well as gender-neutral facilities. Now, Philadelphia Pride is on June 4th, and Philadelphia is going to elect a new mayor on May 16th. Now, go to epgn.com, the Philadelphia Gay News, for more about the candidates and their stands on our issues. Going back to San Francisco, we skipped. San Francisco ended its ban on government travel to anti-LGBTQ states and those that ban abortion. They had also banned contracting with businesses in those states, but they found it was increasing their costs 10 to 20% and hurting vulnerable populations in San Francisco.
In Nebraska, one of the most jaw-dropping and heartbreaking stories of this week, State Senator Megan Hunt. You know of her because she's the one who joined Michaela Kavanaugh in filibustering the anti-LGBTQ bills, and they're still in that filibuster. Megan Hunt joined in part because she has a trans child. Well, now the Republicans in Nebraska are accusing her of a conflict of interest and saying that she will profit from defeating the anti-LGBTQ legislation. A conflict of interest. This is, you could prosecute every single member of every single legislature for a conflict of interest with that kind of thing.
Every member of the Supreme Court. Even Republicans are calling the complaint offensive. Hunt says, I don't need your support. I need your vote.
She's terrific. Those women in Nebraska, the filibuster, the abortion, the defeat of the abortion ban, standing up to these idiots who are claiming things like conflict of interest. It really is just amazing, the courage and relentless, persistent dedication to good values that these people are showing.
Now, we don't usually show you Marjorie Taylor Greene, but we wanted to show you how low she can go, attacking the American Federation of Teachers president, our friend Randi Weingarten. At a congressional hearing, Randi was defended by out Representative Robert Garcia, Democrat of Long Beach. Roll tape.
Are you a mother?
I am a mother by marriage.
By marriage, I see.
And my wife is here with me, so I'm really glad that she's here. Rabbi Sharon Klein.
Ms. Weingarten, I reclaim my time. I didn't ask you a question.
Sorry.
What I'd like to talk about is your recommendations to the CDC as not a medical doctor, not a biological mother, and really not a teacher either. You had no business advising the CDC what the medical guidelines were for school closures, because now we have a nation of school children who have suffered because of it. The problem is people like you need to admit that you're just a political activist, not a teacher, not a mother, and not a medical doctor.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make note that the decorum of the attacks on the witness were unacceptable, that the gentlelady from Georgia just did. And so it'd be nice if we didn't attack the witnesses, particularly whether and making a decision about whether or not she's a mother. You are a mother. Thank you for being a great parent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your point of order is recognized, Mr. Garcia.
So this is about regulations during COVID. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is continuing to insist that closing schools or making kids wear masks was inappropriate. Well, they may have had a little setback in their learning, but if they weren't out of school, if they weren't wearing masks, some of them would not be alive, Marjorie. Is that a preferable outcome for you? And to say, and she was a teacher. She was a teacher. She taught. So that's just a lie. And she is a mother. She and Sharon have kids, and it's just reprehensible that.
But if you want to feel a little better, we want you to listen to Hawaii Democrat Jill Tokuda congratulating the latest winner of RuPaul's Drag Race, a daughter of Hawaii.
I rise today to congratulate Hawaii-born Sasha Keikaoha, more famously known as Sasha Colby, on being crowned the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 15. I am so proud that a fellow Windward girl hailing from the homesteads of Waimanalo has earned the title of America's Next Drag Star. From the very beginning of the competition, Sasha, a seasoned drag legend, drew upon her ethnic heritage and childhood trauma as sources of inspiration for her performances. Throughout Drag Race, she authentically represented her Hawaiian culture, talking about the legacy she's building for our home state and about being mahu. In ancient Hawaiian days, mahu were considered extraordinary individuals of male and female spirit who brought their healing powers to Oahu from Tahiti. Today, trans people are among the most revered members in the Hawaiian community. Amidst ongoing attacks on our LGBTQ+ rights that particularly target trans people and drag queens, her win is not only well-deserved, it gives us all hope. Congratulations to Sasha Colby. You are a leader, you are a proud Mahu, and every drag queen's favorite drag queen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Jill for president.
Surrealism in everyday life on the floor of the House of Representatives. But, you know, don't go to Ohio where Nazis are out, literal Nazis are protesting a drag brunch there.
That's true. Now in Solvang, California, the city council voted 2-2 against a temporary art installation.
3-2.
Oh, sorry, 3-2. Oh, you're right. 3-2 against a temporary art installation, street light banners and rainbow crosswalks to celebrate Pride Month in June. 2 of the city council members said it would endanger equestrian safety. Well, the mayor of Copenhagen, because this is a Danish-loving town in California, said your opposition to Pride is absolutely outrageous and called them out on it, and they switched. Now they're going to allow the banners, but not the crosswalks.
Yeah, Solvang is full of Danish descendants, so they advertise themselves as a very Danish town, and the Danes said, hey, we don't know you.
Staying in California, San Diego is opening up a 45-bed shelter for homeless LGBTQ youth run by the city's LGBTQ Community Center for LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ youth, 18 to 24. They're going to have interim ones set up in 60 days and a permanent one later.
In Conway, Arkansas, the local school board banned trans kids in the bathrooms that reflect their real lived gender. And wait, I just lost it. And banned books and banned public speakers. Well, Alex Bennett and
I think it's Barnett, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I can't read my own handwriting. Right. Alex Barnett and 20 other demonstrators chanted Trans Lives Matter from the lobby of the building where the school board was meeting.
That's Alex on the left there.
Yeah, they weren't allowed in the room because it was already packed, and they weren't allowed to stand around the edge of the room. They had to be in the lobby. So they started chanting Trans Lives Matter. 3 of them ended up sitting in and were arrested. And Alex was sentenced to 10 days in jail.
By a MAGA judge who was very proud of his MAGA-ness.
He's a criminal, the judge.
Yeah. But he did escape being, he was in jail for overnight in a cell without a bed. And he escaped being transferred to the general population, which is dominated by white supremacists, when his lawyer got him out on appeal. But he still could face this 10 days in prison. And he still says, I have absolutely no regrets about what I did.
Well, here are some other demonstrating students in Iowa. They held a ceremony where they were giving out honors to students in Iowa. And the governor, Kim Reynolds, who we've talked about many times on this show as being homophobic and transphobic, she was with some guy handing out the certificates. Well, the students don't like her, so they showed up with slogans on their shirts and made statements. Go to the video.
Marin Pettigrew, Newton. Leo Friedman, Newton. Clementine Springsteen, Davenport West.
Trans rights are indeed human rights. Thank you.
I like the t-shirts that said, I read banned books.
By the way, you were talking about the Pride parades, and did we talk about the fact that the Pride Alliance of Treasure Coast, Florida, announced Pride Fest would be open just to 21 and older because of all these bad laws, and canceled the Port St. Lucie Pride Parade in response to all these laws. Very sad to see. Prides around the country should defy all these restrictions.
They should, and they should be turned into protest marches.
Right.
It's just crazy.
Go to some national news.
Hold on one second. Let me just, sure, go to that and I'll look for other.
President Biden spoke at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and introduced a famous lesbian in the audience. We have a video.
Brittany Griner's here with her wife, Cheryl. Brittany, where are you, kid? Stand up. Come on. I love this woman. Love you, Brittany. This time last year, we were praying for you, Brittany, hoping you knew how hard all of us were fighting for your release. It's great to have you home. And boys, I can hardly wait to see you back on the court, kid. Remember your promise, I get to bring my granddaughter, my all-state girl, to see you, right?
Now, I know that not everybody likes the use of traditional terms, but I have to say it just puts a smile on my face to hear the President of the United States or anyone else say Brittany Griner and her wife, Cheryl.
Indeed.
So easily.
And the president also made a crack about Ron DeSantis.
Had Ron DeSantis, I had a lot of Ron DeSantis jokes ready. But Mickey Mouse beat the hell out of me, got there first. Now look, can't be too rough on the guy. After his re-election as governor, he was asked if he had a mandate. He said, hell no, I'm straight. I'm straight. I'll give you time to think that one through. You got it?
Didn't require much thinking. Excellent news from Missouri.
You stay with Biden for a second?
Okay.
Yeah, because last week he did issue, on the 70th anniversary of the Lavender Scare, the purge of LGBTQ people in the federal government under an executive order from President Eisenhower banning us. Biden said it was one of the darkest chapters of our history and went on about that. We don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to talk about his hero, FDR, who did a purge of gay people at Newport's naval facility in 1919.
And also from the federal government, the CDC issued a report this week that found that 24.5% of students identify as non-heterosexual. This is a study of students in grades 9 through 12, 17,500 of them, which is an excellent sample size. 12.2% identify as bisexual, 5.2% questioning, 3.9% other, and 3.2% gay and lesbian.
We're taking over.
Well, these politicians better get out of the way. They're not going to last long.
The gay right-winger billionaire Peter Thiel is getting out of the way. He says he's going to sit out donating to Republicans this cycle, angry about the party's focus on culture war issues such as abortion and transgender rights, which is nothing new. Senate Republicans welcome his exit, since in 2022 he propped up a bunch of extremists like Blake Masters in Arizona and the uber bigot Chris Colbeck in Kansas, his candidate. J.D. Vance did prevail in Ohio, but Vance's weakness as a candidate caused the party to spend a lot of money in Ohio that they didn't want to spend.
The governor of Washington, Inslee, has announced he is not running again, but he signed a bill to protect abortion rights and trans care as he slowly makes his way to the exit. But on the other end of the political spectrum, Oklahoma Governor Stitt has vetoed funding for the PBS stations in Oklahoma because he says they're full of LGBTQ indoctrination. and are too pro-LGBTQ.
All right.
They're slowly cutting off their whole constituency because parents are now up in arms that the PBS station has been defunded with all its kids shows. So one by one, he's adding enemies to his list, as are all these people.
The Senate this past week fell short of overcoming the Republican filibuster against the Equal Rights Amendment, a resolution that would have, extended the 1982 deadline for state ratification. 3 states, Virginia, Nevada, and Illinois, passed it after 1982. It was a 51-49 vote, but 60 votes were needed. 2 Republicans did vote in favor, Murkowski and Collins.
Also back in the feds, Sean Patrick Maloney, who screwed up the congressional fights in New York State while winning more across the country than expected, is not going to run for office again. He is going to be appointed ambassador to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris.
And Mondaire Jones is going to move back up there and run for his old seat.
Good news from Missouri. We told you about the hospital that was under attack for its trans care program and how a former client had claimed they were a terrible operation. Well, a study has been done and they are not a terrible operation. They are just fine. This is another right-wing, ginned up attack on something that is doing good work. And I'm glad to see that their name has been cleared.
A couple of obits to talk about.
Okay. All right. Before we get to that, can I just run through a couple of quick other things? Yes. In the state of Washington, the ACLU and Alaska Airlines have reached a settlement, a consent agreement. A non-binary flight attendant will not be forced to wear stereotypical uniforms, and neither will anyone else. And they're going to do some training of employees on gender issues. In New Jersey, Secaucus, a gay librarian, has been fired because he complained about being harassed for his gay lifestyle. It's not allowed. In Atlanta, Georgia, where they're having a terrible mass shooting today, as we tape, they have arrested a 17-year-old man for the shooting death of Coco Dadal that we talked about last week, the trans star. And the Lawrenceville School in New Jersey has apologized for not stopping the bullying of a boy who ended up committing suicide. His classmates had falsely accused him of rape, and he ended up killing himself.
Terrible. All right, some people we lost through, lesbian feminist author and activist and teacher Dolores Claich has died back on March 8th, but we're just hearing about it. In 1974, she wrote a social history of lesbians in the United States titled Woman Plus Woman. Her novel, Heavy Guilt, was nominated for a Lambda Literary Award. She was a delegate to the 1977 National Women's Conference, part of the caucus that secured passage of a resolution to protect rights based on sexual orientation. For 10 years, she was an AIDS educator for the state of New York at State University of New York at Albany. She chose to die on International Women's Day with the help of Vermont's law for medical aid in dying at her home in Burlington.
And in Los Angeles, Gail Christian has died at 83. She's there on the right. She worked for NBC and PBS. She covered the Patty Hearst case. She went to jail for what'd she do? Some minor infraction early on, but went on to become a prominent reporter. And she specifically wanted to be a Black reporter. She wanted to cover the Black community and be a spokesperson for Black issues and Black people. And that wasn't very, fashionable.
Well, in the 60s, they heard that they needed Black reporters, and she went and applied without much of a resume. And they asked for her clips, and she said, the paper was a small black paper, and it was burned down by the KKK. It was a lie, but she got it, and she had a very successful career.
She also had an ambition to be a manager, to direct coverage, because she wanted to be able to control the way things were talked about.
And she and her wife started the Palm Springs Women's Jazz Festival in 2003.
And she won a gazillion awards for her coverage over the years, and again was a trailblazer.
Right. A black trans man?
Yes.
Banco Brown, 24, shot to death by a security guard at a Walgreens, allegedly when he was shoplifting. Now, they're saying it was self-defense, and they haven't charged this guy. But it's a terrible story.
This is in San Francisco. Yeah. Since when is the penalty for shoplifting death?
Right.
All right. Should we move on to international news?
Oh, yes. And that horrible anti-LGBTQ bill in Uganda has moved forward. Basically, there's only one representative there who spoke out against this. One, Odoi Oiweli Fox. He's the only member of parliament who spoke against the bill. A very brave person. Everybody else, except I think one other person, voted for it. Now, I think the only modification they made is if you just identify as gays, you don't do anything. You're not going to be imprisoned, they said. But
if you have sexual relations, that puts you in prison. And if you have sexual relations with the wrong person, you can get the death penalty.
Exactly. And when they say the wrong person, one of the people they're included is with an older person.
Yes.
Over 75 or something. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Now, the only hope, we have Frank Mugisha there, of the banned Sexual Minorities Uganda group. He was on Rachel Maddow's show, who, by the way, beat Hannity in the ratings, and with this show, in fact. And he, the only hope they have is challenging its constitutionality.
Which they did win a few years ago against a similar bill, but clearly the government is just going to be relentless about this.
People there are gay people there, LGBTQ people there under siege, fleeing to Kenya. So Kenya is considering the same kind of legislation.
There was a protest in London among Ugandan refugees led by or organized by our friend Peter Tatchell there. So again, people are speaking up, but not enough. And the forces of evil are still too big.
Right.
And
go ahead.
In Russia, a Chinese national, Haoyang Zhu, who had been held for 3 weeks for supposedly pushing LGBT propaganda, which means he was posting pictures like this with his boyfriend on social media, has finally been released and reunited with his partner. You cannot be out and not be accused of promoting LGBTQ propaganda in Russia. It's just getting worse by the minute.
It's not clear if he's going to be deported. Conditions in detention, by the way, were rather severe. And staying, I guess, in Russia, the Bolshoi Ballet has dropped from its repertoire a contemporary ballet about the great Rudolf Nureyev, son of Russia, due to the expansion of Russia's ban on LGBTQ propaganda that restricts all depictions of homosexuality, not just to kids. When it premiered in 2017, the culture minister condemned it as gay propaganda then. Now it's banned for promoting non-traditional values. Nureyev defected to the West in 1961. He had the right idea.
In Hungary, we talk all the time about the prime minister, Viktor Orban, but they also have a president, and she has vetoed the new law that encourages people to report same-sex families. Now, where that stands in the pecking order of the prime minister, the very powerful and very evil prime minister versus the female president, I don't know, but she evidently was empowered to stop this law.
Well, the Pope is empowering some women to have a vote at the big synod that he's planning in October. They're hardly represented properly, but it's a handful and it's a new thing. The synod is supposed to take up the role of women and LGBTQ people in the church. You would think they would want women and LGBTQ people represented. Well, of course.
Okay. Andy. Are we back to calling you naive?
Okay. Well, it's movement, and we should report it.
Yes, although people wanted more. So this is.
By the way, Russia's war on the Ukraine has boosted support for LGBTQ rights in Ukraine.
Yes.
They're saying if he's against them, we're for them. Then they're concerned for the partners of soldiers getting benefits. And about 100 soldiers have come out.
Paraguay has elected a right-wing president who is anti-LGBTQ.
In India, the Supreme Court is waffling on same-sex marriage. It's working its way through their court because the government is whining about how complicated it would be. Meanwhile, the gay-themed movie Badhai Do won big at the Bollywood Film Fair Awards. Best actor, story, screenplay, critics, best film, all this kind of stuff. It's about a gay man and a lesbian getting into a marriage of convenience, and how it doesn't quite work out. We will link to the trailer in our email.
Okay, AIDS news. In California, the state auditor has issued a report. They looked at 129 agencies that are supposed to be collecting demographic data on LGBTQ people in their work. Only 17 of those 129 agencies are collecting that data. Pass all the laws you want. That doesn't mean anyone's going to pay attention to them.
A woman named Holly Barlow Austin, 47 years old, died in 2019 in a Texas for-profit jail after being denied medical care for HIV, among other things. The family sued and just won a $7 million federal civil rights suit, the largest in Texas history. She was arrested on a misdemeanor probation violation, which seems to carry the death penalty in this barbarous prison system. New York's no better, of course. We have all these people dying at Rikers Island. After Holly's death, Bowie County renewed its contract with the private jailer, LaSalle, and the LaSalle's attitude is, well, the less we spend on healthcare, the more money we make.
Exactly. They had withheld her HIV and mental health medications. She got an infection. She was blind. She couldn't walk. She couldn't see the food and water in her cell because of that. Last week, and they have this on videotape, she was, because of medical observation of her cell, she was dehydrated, malnourished, living in filth. She had fungal sepsis, cryptococcal meningitis, HIV, hypertension, all of these things that the private jail did nothing about. And then they, classic move, discharged her just before her death to avoid a criminal investigation of these conditions.
All right, someone we lost this week. Pioneering AIDS physician Dr. Wilbert Jordan has died at the age of 78. He started the Oasis Clinic in LA in 1979 that treated some of the first AIDS patients, which we became aware of in 1981. A Harvard grad who did medicine at Case Western Reserve. He treated his first person with AIDS. They didn't know what it was, again, in 79. The CDC didn't identify it until 81. Most of the patients were people of color, and he addressed not just their medical needs, but also helped them overcome stigma, food insecurity, sexual violence, insufficient housing, and psychological risk for HIV.
He was able to see the whole universe of issues around HIV. He won many awards and is in the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame.
Okay. All right. Entertainment news?
Oh, we got a lot of pictures to show you, but first, the Tony nominations.
Well, I was encouraged to see Jordan E. Cooper, the first one up, get a Tony nomination for Best Performance by an Actor in a Featured Role in a Play, Ain't No Mo, which he wrote, and it's also nominated for Best Play. Didn't last very long, but it was a terrific show.
And then Fat Ham.
Yeah, James Imes already won the Pulitzer, is nominated for Best Play. I think that's a terrific show. And then non-binary Alex Newell was nominated for Tony for Best Featured Actor in a Musical in Shucked, a new musical featuring music and lyrics by LGBTQ country artists Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally, who were also nominated.
And also from Shucked, Kevin Cahoon.
He is absolutely hilarious in that show, in Shucked. It's a really great show. And then Some Like It Hot won the most musical nominations, and non-binary actor Jay Harrison Gee is nominated for Best Actor in a Musical.
And Ben Platt nominated for Parade.
He's an out gay actor, and also, of course, out is Sean Hayes in Goodnight Oscar, nominated for Best Actor in a Play. I saw that this week. It's kind of a slog because, as you can see from the expression on his face, he's quite unhappy throughout the whole show. He's just been let out of a mental institution to go on the Jack Parr show. But it's quite a performance, and he was nominated.
Well, I remember Oscar Levant. He was never a barrel of laughs. We mentioned the drama.
He was one of the funniest people on TV.
He was hilarious, but what I mean is he was a little dour. We mentioned the Drama Desk Awards last week and how they were changing to a non-gendered list. I burst out laughing when I saw that Queen Jean, who is one of the most famous trans activists in New York City, got a Drama Desk nomination for costume design for the show Wedding Band. Queen Jean is a Drama Desk nominee.
Well, trans non-binary Justin David Sullivan of And Juliet, a musical on Broadway, opted out of consideration for the Tonys. I hope that award shows across the industry will expand their reach to be able to honor and award people of all gender identities. The Tony Awards are Sunday, June 11th on CBS. You probably won't see the special. They're going to give the Isabel Stevenson Award Tony to Jerry Mitchell, who has done such fabulous, we got a picture of him, such fabulous work. Certainly he's won Tonys himself for his work, but he is being awarded for his work for Broadway Cares. He's the guy who produced Broadway Bears all these many years.
Ubiquitous and heroic. Jerry Mitchell is he's one of those people you call a treasure. Okay. All right. Also withdrawing from consideration for an award, Liv Houston of Yellow Jackets withdrew from consideration for an Emmy nomination, saying there is no place for me. Liv is non-binary and uses they, them pronouns.
Okay. All right. Now, I got a couple of other reviews. You may know Jody. Oh, well, first of all, put up this picture of, you've been following the trial of E. Jean Carroll. And, we're not allowed inside the courtroom there. But if you go see this play, because, again, she's accusing Trump of having raped her.
And let's say hello to our friend Lori Arbiter there holding up the signs, which she conceives and makes.
Which says, we believe E. Jean Carroll and Trump is a sexual predator. All true. Yeah. So this play is so parallel to it. Jodie Comer, you may know her from Killing Eve. She now brings her harrowing one-woman play, Prima Facie, from London, where she won the Olivier Award, to Broadway. Her character is a barrister who defends rapists as a defense attorney, but then she's raped by a colleague. And in taking us through the trial, we learn what hell a victim goes through on the stand, even when they themselves are very skilled in the law. It's a very shattering performance. And so she's probably the favorite for the Tony. Another, yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. We have about 4.5 minutes. Summer 76.
Yeah, Laura Linney and Jessica Hecht, in that case on the right there got a Tony nomination. David Oberon's. It's a play about an intense friendship between young moms in '76 and what can happen to friendships. It's not earth-shattering stuff, but it's very well done by them.
But they're not lesbians, right?
No, they're not. They're both married to men with children.
Lowered my interest.
No, actually, the Laura Linney character isn't married to her partner.
Whatever.
Candor and Ebb, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Susan Stroman. What could go wrong? New York, New York.
But we are thrilled to announce that Harmony, the show we saw off Broadway last year, is going to Broadway. Written and produced music and lyrics and book by Barry Manilow on the left and Bruce Sussman on the right, who you've seen here on Gay USA. We loved this show when we saw it last year, and they've been working on it for decades and trying to get it to Broadway, and now it is going there in October.
This is about a popular German and mostly Jewish a cappella group that got shot down by the Nazis.
And had a couple of gay members.
Right.
It's a true story. It won a lot of awards off Broadway, and I hope it is as successful on Broadway.
The New York Historical Society on Central Park West there is opening Friday an exhibit on illustrator J.C. Leyendecker, the guy who created the Arrow Collar Man. It's called Undercover, J.C. Leyendecker and American Masculinity, whose fashion setting work and queer overtures they note, as you can see from this one, which is called Record Time. Very gay. And then there's a major retrospective of Keith Haring's work at the Brood. Say it again.
The Brood.
The Brood is the name of
the Brood. The Brood.
Museum in Broad, a museum in there on May 27th and through October 8th. It's called
Los Angeles.
Yes, it's called Art is for Everybody. This is an artist who got his start with graffiti on the subway stations, and he created this poster for ACT UP. He died of complications from AIDS in 1988 at 31.
Quick note, the current Jeopardy champ is a guy named Kevin Bell, who identifies himself as a part-time drag performer named Whiskey Ginger.
And give credit to Ken Jennings, because when they said he should be a drag queen, he said, well, my drag name could be Della Double.
Not very good, but he can do better, I'm sure. All right, so, and Netflix is going to produce a play by 100-year-old Norman Lear about a gay Marine. It's a memoir called The Core. And now to the Met Gala this week. We're going to run through pictures of LGBTQ and allied people who were there. There's Brittany Griner with her wife, Sherelle. Just keep flipping through.
Alex Newell. Stephanie Shu. Lizzo. Councilmember Shai Ase. Kristen Stewart.
Yes.
Jonathan Groff. Ben Platt. Our friend Dwayne Wade. Ariana DeBose, who's going to be hosting the Tonys. Lil Nas X.
We debated whether we could show this, but he's completely covered.
Yes.
Pedro Pascal, the gay icon of the moment. Janelle Monáe, who then flipped up that hoop to show an almost bare costume underneath. And Kim Petras, the trans singer who with Sam Smith did Unholy. And that's your glimpse of the Met Gala and all for us. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for being with us.